Hey guys, what's going on? It is Cruzavi here, back with part 3 of our aim guide for Valorant. And today we're covering a super interesting topic, and that is transferring your raw aiming skill into the competitive environment of ranked. It is one of the most common psychological phenomena in sports and therefore also esports that people are struggling with performing to the level they achieve during practice when the stakes are high. And this applies to Valorant as well, and many players throw all their well-practiced mechanics out the window and start crouch spraying the second they see an enemy. This is certainly something I've struggled with and still struggle with to a certain extent, and so I think I'm able to give valuable advice on the topic. I will cover both mechanical as well as psychological advice in this video, and I'm confident that it will be a game changer for you, so please stick with me. Let's start off with the mechanical part and then get into the crucial psychological techniques later on. In part 2 of this aiming series, we have talked a lot about how to improve your raw aim, and we briefly touched on how to practice other important game mechanics such as crosshair placement and movement as well. What's important for you to understand in order to become a really good player is that all your mechanics need to work together like a well-oiled machine. It's easy to think, okay, crosshair on head level, pre-aim where the enemy is going to be, and then correct with a micro adjustment. Got it. The problem is that this sounds way easier than it is, and you most likely have much worse mechanics than you think you do. And so in order to achieve great overall aim, you not only need to perfect your raw aim, but also your movement and crosshair placement. Let's take a look at an example here. I'm playing defender side on Breeze and clear angles in B main. In this first part of the clip, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I'm slicing the pie with small peaks, my crosshair is right on the wall, and I'm accounting for the elevation changes. These angles are not easy to peak because there are a lot of different elevations, and in the end I'm not exactly on the Viper's head since my crosshair placement is too high, but it is still an easy kill with very little correction needed. Now onto the second part of the clip, and arguably the much easier kill. You can see that in the beginning I'm edge tracking, which is good for clearing all the off-angle space. However, I could probably stay a bit further to the right and hug the wall to maximize my angle advantage. And then it really starts to get sloppy, because while still moving to the right, I already start pre-aiming into the wall, which you shouldn't do, and I do it because I want to prepare a strafe peek into B main. So because I'm still moving to the right, the Sova appears on my screen, and instead of having my crosshair on his head when edge tracking, I have it in the wall already. Then I strafe peek as I planned, but because I'm still moving down a ramp, my crosshair ends up on chest level and not head level. I also start shooting right away instead of adjusting for head level first, and then I hectically try to adjust while already spraying. I get aim punched from his headshot, and the entire fight that really should have been an easy kill for me turns into a mess, ending up with me dying. From this one example alone, you can see how many things I still have to work on. The more of a beginner you are, the more obvious your mechanical mistakes are going to be. But even at an advanced level like Ascendant or Immortal, players are still doing a ton of things wrong. And the point of this in-depth analysis is, don't get lazy and satisfied with your mechanics. There's always something to improve at. You just have to look back at a couple of clips from your gameplay and figure out what you still need to work on. While you're in-game, my advice is to take your time. Don't rush clearing angles and moving through the map, because good crosshair placement and movement needs a lot of corrections, switching between angles, changing the wall that you're hugging to peak, pre-aiming adjustments to account for elevation changes, and so on. It's like a dance, and you should always be looking to perfect your technique. Crosshair placement, movement, and aim have to become one smooth choreograph that you can adjust to any situation and fight you encounter during a match. So the first reason why players such as Ye, Cryo or Scream seem to aim so effortlessly is because they almost perfected the mechanics we just talked about in detail. The second reason is that they're always in control. Now, what do I mean by that? Valorant can be a fast game with a ton of things happening. Utility being used, enemies suddenly peeking you, your crosshair being needed in all tons of places. And it is very easy to lose control over your aim and your gun. But you never want to let that happen. When someone peeks you from a position you were not ready for, you don't want to do half a step, flick like a maniac and instantly start spraying and crouching. This is you losing control. Instead, you want to flick over to the guy while moving to make yourself hard to hit. Maybe you can fire a burst of 1 or 2 bullets to see if you can land a flick shot, but more importantly, you then adjust your crosshair to the enemy's head position now that you can see it clearly, and you try to take him out cleanly. If the enemy headshots you right away, you're going to be dead no matter what, and it's not a question of your mechanics then. And it's also not a problem if you're currently too slow with your flick and micro adjustment. That is exactly what you're practicing for. The point is, if you stay in control and don't panic, your chances of winning more duels like this in the long run are so much higher. Staying in control also matters when you are the one to miss your first shots. If you commit to a Vandal crouch spray right away, not only is your single left option to pray to the Valorant gods for a lucky kill, but you are also extremely easy to hit because you're a stationary target. Instead, stay on your feet and always burst strafe. This way, every burst you have the chance to nail your aiming adjustment and hit a clean headshot, while at the same time making yourself hard to hit for the enemy. That is how you want your Valorant gameplay to look like. Here we have another scene from a German pro player called Bucher. He was playing for Focus Clan until recently, and he has extremely clean mechanics as well. He's clearing mid on Breeze, and suddenly Chamber peeks him from elbow, which catches Bucher somewhat off guard. His crosshair is in a very bad spot for this fight, so he immediately flicks over, but he doesn't rush his shot. Instead, he takes his time to micro adjust while also strafing to the left, and still he does not commit to his spray and only fires a burst. The burst doesn't deliver the headshot that he's looking for, and so he strafes to the right again and this time lands a clean headshot for the kill. He then spots the enemy Sova in bottom mid and tap fires to land 2 clean headshots with the Bulldog this time and take him out as well. Mechanics of this level are very hard to achieve, but they should be what you aim for. Because staying calm and in control like this not only gives you the best chance to take enemies out with clean headshots, but also makes you a much harder target to hit, since you're strafing at a very high rate in between your bursts and taps. If you're able to approach all your fights like this, it's going to give you a major advantage over the vast majority of players who start to get sloppy under pressure. Now, onto the extremely important psychological part of improving your aim in a competitive environment. I've just mentioned a ton of different skills to master, and the paradox of human psychology is that the harder you try to do all these things right in a ranked match, the more tense you will become, and the chances of failing to execute these exact skills increase significantly. This is something that I have definitely experienced. Trying to focus heavily on all the things you want to improve, but because of it, you end up overthinking and playing very poorly. In order to play well in Valorant ranked matches, you need to play intuitively and achieve sort of a flow state. So you might ask then, how do we focus on improving while still staying in a flow? Well, the way we solve that issue is by mastering the so-called inner game. I didn't come up with this concept myself. In fact, it is originally from someone called Timothy Galway, who wrote a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, which is one of the best books I have ever read on sports psychology, and so I would highly recommend it if you're interested. I also want to give credit to a YouTuber named West Proder here, who is an aim coach and he makes great videos on aiming. He covered the book in a few of his videos, and this is how I learned about the inner game concept. Both the book and West Proder's channel are linked in the description, so make sure to check them out. Now, the essence of the inner game concept is that there are two selves involved in sports performance, self 1 and self 2. Self 1 is your conscious self, the one that says, I want to improve my crosshair placement, and I need to take my time when aiming to micro-adjust on the opponent's head. Self 2 is your unconscious self that is responsible for controlling your muscles and the thousands of processes that are happening while you play a game of Valorant. There is no way you could consciously control your aim and be like, now apply pressure with right thumb, now move wrist 5 degrees to the right, and so on. And that is exactly the point. Self 1 should not involve itself in the job of Self 2. And by trying to consciously focus too much on improving certain aspects of your game, you're doing just that. Now you might say that I'm not making sense, because how would you ever improve then on so many aspects that I have mentioned in this aiming guide series if you're not allowed to focus on them? And to that I would say, or Timothy Galway would say to that rather, you need to let it happen instead of forcing it to happen. The thought of, I want to improve my crosshair placement and aim is enough already for yourself to know its job. And it can do that job best if you trust it. Let me give you some very concrete advice on what you can do during ranked matches to improve your performance and learn faster. Try to focus on the target as best as you can. The second you see an enemy, you should try and lock your eyes onto his head with laser focus. This way you receive as much information about the target's location and current movement as possible, and you also keep Self 1 occupied, which is great, because then Self 2 can control your aim in peace. Secondly, when something goes wrong, don't get angry about it. This is very important. In his book, Galway refers to that as Self 1 blaming Self 2, and that will make achieving peak performance much less likely. So instead of saying something like, man, my crosshair placement is shit, why can't I fix it? Simply observe, my crosshair placement was a little bit too high for this angle, and let the correction happen by itself. This stops you from undermining the trust you have in your own abilities, and the subtle observation is all that Self 2 needs to improve the next time a similar situation occurs. Improvement is going to happen if you let it, and you need to trust that process. You need to trust Self 2. Keep Self 1 busy by thinking about strategy and big in-game decisions, and by focusing on the target as quickly as you can when an enemy appears. And then leave everything else, everything mechanical, to Self 2. There is a lot more explained in the book that I can't all cover in this video, so once again, I would recommend you to check it out. And since I've talked so much about crosshair placement in this video, I would also recommend you to check out our crosshair placement guide next. It's linked right here. Thank you so much for watching this guide. I will talk to you all in the next video. See you then. Much love. Peace.